Hey, welcome back. So we're working through these different types of auth. We started with anonymous auth, and then we got rid of it because it really was just for testing. We moved on to email password auth, and it's working, right? So I mean, right now I'm signed in as the president, and I like email password auth because it's good for a lot of systems. The thing I dislike about it, though, is you're forcing your users to make yet another username and password, which is really a pain. As a user, I hate it. So I try to encourage developers not to use it. Obviously, there are times where it is the right move, but I much prefer things that let users use their existing resources. And so there's two that we're going to work on. One is Rosefire. So this is a custom auth if you're a Rolls-Holman student, faculty, or staff. By the way, if you're watching this video and you're not a Rolls-Holman student, faculty, or staff, stop watching this video. It's worthless to you, right? This is just for Rose people. The next time we're going to do a Google auth, which will be useful for anybody watching the video, but we're going to do Rosefire authentication. So this will let people use their Rolls-Holman username and password. This video might be a little longer, but I wanted to all get this content into one video. So the way you do this is you use a tool called Rosefire. So Rosefire has this flow chart of things that you need to do. So there's certain things that you as the creator need to do. You need to go like interact with websites. There's code that you need to write into your app that your app has to do. And then there's a part that Rosefire plays and a part that Firebase plays. This diagram is actually really good and really useful, and it's going to be really meaningful to you, but maybe not yet. So we'll come back to this diagram. So backing things up a little bit, who made Rosefire? What is it? It's a way to use your Rolls-Holman username and password. This idea was kind of inspired by Mike McDonald. He was a Rose student, then he wanted to work at Firebase, and he said, hey, somebody should make this for Rolls-Holman so they can use, custom auth. And then sure enough, Tyler made it. Happened to be the same guy that made a lot of the things in this app. Here's some links for where the code is. So it's on Rolls-Holman's internal Git server called Ada. And then there's a website that you're also going to need to visit at some point called rosefire.csse.rolls-holman.edu. So this tool lets you use OAuth for users. There's two important links that you really need. One is the instructions for how you integrate it into your app. And then the other is an example that just kind of shows you a functional example. I like functional examples, so let's play with that one first. So if you click on this link, I think the link's also on this next slide, it'll take you over to Rolls-Holman's internal Git server. And over here is where the iOS example is. Interestingly enough, though, the iOS example is just instructions, which is kind of funny. And so usually it's like code you would download and code you would run, but iOS has this thing with pods to where you can try something and it's this slick system. So let's do these two lines. So first it says make sure you've got the latest version of CocoaPods installed. So that's easy. So I'm just going to go over into my terminal and I'm going to put this command in. And it's just going to make sure that I've got the latest version of CocoaPod try. So it looks like that's fine. And then it says to type this command and basically sit back and watch magic happen. So I paste that in and I hit enter. It actually is going to go download a project for me, which was kind of interesting. And then it's going to open up Xcode for me. And you can see that rather magically, it just kind of like launched you into an app. This should be a functional app. So really all you have to do is you have to hit run. Now I might go ahead and stop my other one from running just so I don't get confused, right? So I stopped Password Keeper from running. I made sure my simulator is kind of back to here. And so I'm just going to run this example and I'm going to get an idea of what Rosefire, like the experience is for users. Once it launches, you can see it's a pretty simple screen. So you click on log in and it'll bring up a web view is what actually just happened here. And you have to put in your username and your password for Rolls-Holman. I do sometimes find it annoying. So my username is FisherDS. Sometimes it wants to auto-correct that and make it like Fishers. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you. For my password, I'm going to put it in off screen here. All right, now bring that back. So when you sign in, it's not really that exciting. It just says auth is FisherDS. And you can click on log out and you're logged out. So this example is extremely simple, but it shows you all you really need to know, and that's how do I, go sign in. So let's go glance at the code that's used in this guy. And so everything is in this example for Rosefire. I mean, you can go look at the storyboard, but it's a pretty darn simple storyboard, right? It's just got a couple text views and a couple buttons that shows either log in or log out, and there's the text view. Inside the view controller, a couple things that I want to mention. As you can see, it says import Rosefire. So there's actually going to be some type of pod file. Now this example has kind of a weird thing going in the pod file, so I'm not going to look at it, but you can see that there's an import Rosefire. There's this thing called a registry token, so we're going to have to get something called a registry token. And then the total number of lines of code to sign in are actually pretty few, right? So there's something you do with Rosefire. So you say, hey, go sign in with Rosefire. If there's an error, then it just returns. But assuming that there's no error, then it goes and talks to Firebase. So you can see that it consists of sending this registry token to Rosefire, and the user is logging in. And then Rosefire gives you something back. So it gives you back a result. And then you send that result to Firebase, right? So that's all I really wanted to say about this example. We'll just go ahead and stop the example here so you can actually just close down the example. Let's go look at that diagram again and see if it makes any more sense to us now. So here are the things you have to do. So we're going to try to understand it now. So you, the app creator, have to install the Rosefire SDK. That's a CocoaPod. No problem, we'll do that. You, the app creator, has to go to a website, and you have to give a private key to Rosefire. And so we're going to do that. We're going to go to the Rosefire website and get that. They're going to give us back that registry token. That's just a string, right? So we're going to get that string. Then inside our app, we have to write some code. Inside our app, what we have to do is we have to send that registry token and display that web view. And we're just going to kind of like blindly send that off, and then it's a black box. And then what comes back from that back box is a JOT, right? So JWT, I pronounce it JOT. So you get that JOT back from Rosefire, and then you take that same JOT and you give it to Firebase, and then Firebase says, okay, you're signed in with custom auth now. It's a little complex. If you want to understand all the details, I'm sure you could look on the Rosefire repo, and there's more stuff. Honestly, I'm mainly interested in what do I need to know to use it, and these are the steps. So the first step, we're just going to kind of do them top to bottom. The first step is to install the SDK. That's easy. You just need to go to this link for iOS SDK, and there's instructions here. It's just a pod, right? So I'm just going to copy this pod. If the version changes on this page, definitely use the updated version. But I'm just going to use what's there. So right now it looks like it's 201. So I paste that guy in here. Looks like it's a little too long for my screen, but that's no big deal. It's all on one line. I like to indent things properly though. So there we've got a new pod added. So I'm going to have to go over into terminal again. I want to make sure I'm still in the right folder. It's been a while since we've done a pod file. I am still in the right folder. I can see I've got my pod file right here. So I just say pod install. And then when I run it, it should do some things related to Rosefire. So you can see it got 2.1.0. Great. So I just did the first step. That was an easy first step. I loved it. So check, one down. Next up, we need to give a private key to Rosefire. So the real question is, where do you get this private key to give to Rosefire? And interestingly enough, you have to go to Firebase to get your private key. I know it sounds like a lot of steps here. So you're going to need to go to the gear icon, permissions, service account, create service account, so that they'll give you that private key file. So go ahead and hop over to your console. So here I brought mine up for this app. And you actually want to click on this gear icon to go into permissions. So you're going to go into permissions for your Firebase project. From permissions, you go to service accounts. From service accounts, you click on create service accounts. So we're going to create a service account. So let's just call it, I don't care, Rosefire. That seems like a very reasonable name for a service account. You have to check this box for furnish a new private key. To be honest, the only thing we really care about is the private key, right? So that's really the only thing we want. Click on create, and it'll have you download a file, which would be great. This file you can save wherever you like, but I recommend you kind of save it somewhere, pseudo safe, right? Um, so maybe what you might want to do is you might want to just like make a folder called like secrets or something like that, and then you could paste it inside there. And then if you want to be really secure, you could like git ignore the secrets folder. That'd be a great thing to do. So at any rate, I've got this new file. If I wanted to go see it, I could just say show in Finder. If I just wanted to open it up and see it, I could go look at it. If you want to kind of see what all's in here, you can see that there's a bunch of stuff at the top, but then starts the only thing you care about, and that's this giant private key. I think all this encryption and secrecy stuff is really neat. I just don't want to know all the details. Got my private key, ready to do the step of giving my private key to Rosefire. In order to give my private key to Rosefire, I kind of need to move on to step 2. I need to go to the Rosefire website, which is just rosefire.csse.rolesholman.edu. I'm sure this website will change over time, but basically right now you click on Get Started. You have to verify yourself here to make sure that you should be getting Rosefire stuff. When you click on Verify, it just goes to Verified, and then you can go to the next page. Don't love the UI here, so I'm sure it will change. Accept default options, you bet. Am I using Firebase? Yes, I am using Firebase. Oh, I should mention Rosefire can be used without Firebase now. It's been extended to do things without Firebase, but we're using Firebase. And it says upload your credentials file. So I'm just going to click on choose file and find that file that I just put into my secrets folder, right? So now I've uploaded that file. It shows the private key. So you can see the only thing it cared about in there was the private key. And then I click on generate. At that point, it's given me a registry token. Yours will be different than mine, but you copy your registry token and you bring it over to your app and you save it off somewhere. I think probably what makes the most sense is to save it off into the login view controller, and you just create a constant, right? So I'll just stick it right here. So we'll just say let Rosefire registry token. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just trying to pick a name that makes sense to me, and then paste it in. Great. So now I'm ready to start using that inside my app. So here's kind of in the slides all the steps that we just did. And then at this point, we've done the like we're almost all the way there, right? So we've taken care of getting our registry token. Now we're ready to do stuff inside of our app, right? So we're kind of done with our stuff. Now we're ready for our app to do stuff. So he's going to have to send this to Rosefire. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to import Rosefire so that we've got commands for Rosefire. So import Rosefire. I've had it come up where it says that there's an error on this line. I don't know why that happens, but if I build it or run it, here I ran it, it goes away, right? So feature, it shows an error, which goes away the first time you run it. From there, what you're going to do is you're going to do the stuff that's shown on this slide. You're going to set yourself as the UI delegate. That's just because it shows a view controller, and in order for Rosefire to do what it does, it has to have a delegate to do the showing for it. So you just say UI delegate self. So let's go type that. So I'm going to go find in my login view controller, there's like a big to-do, implement Rosefire login. Sounds like a good plan. So we say Rosefire.shared delegate, and then we want, I think it's UI delegate equals self. So that is us, great. And then Rosefire shared delegate, I think it's sign in. And so, yep, so sign in. There's not a lot of methods on the shared delegate, which is kind of nice. So we sign in. It says it wants a registry token right here. So that's easy. We've got a registry token. I've got it right here. So I'm just going to copy that and plop that right there. And then it says with closure. I'm going to hit enter and see if it kind of auto-completes some for me. So what it gives you is it gives you an error and then also a Rosefire result, which is great. So I'm just going to call it result. Try to fix my formatting up a little bit here, and then here I've got my callback. If you want to, here we're kind of typing it live. You can also just copy paste this from like the usage instructions, but I kind of like typing it live. First thing I like to do whenever I have functions like this is I'll just say if the error is not nil. So if it's not nil, then something went horribly wrong. So just say error communicating with Rosefire and return. I kind of like that style of error handling, right? So just if there's an error, just abandon ship, right? If it worked, then that result, they gave you something, right? And so at this point, you can talk to Firebase. So now we're going to talk to Firebase auth. It's probably going to be auth, and it's going to be one of their sign-ins. And sure enough, it's right here: sign in with custom token. So they want a token, and so the token we're going to give them is from our result that Rosefire gave us. So this is where it gets kind of confusing. And then they want a completion handler. We've already got one of those. We've got the login completion handler, right? So let me just type it, and then it'll look nice and pretty. Oops, it wants me to say self dot. They always get me on that because I'm inside of another closure. Cool. So let's go look at the slides again. Make sure that we've made sense. So we sent things to Rosefire. They gave us back a jot. We sent that jot to Firebase, and then presto, you're signed in. So we should be done. And so the funny thing is once it works, we've already done all the CRUD methods, and so we'll just kind of be done. So it's like shooting the moon, right? So it either all works or it doesn't work at all. And if it all works, then we're done with this whole unit, right? Or done with this whole video. So I click on Rosefire login. So far, so good. I sign in with my Rolls-Holman username, and then I put in my password. Once I've got that in, I click on sign in, and it should take me over to this screen, which is great. So I'm just going to add one here. So I'll go ahead and say project by Fisher DS. So I should have said via Rolls login. Say via Rosefire. My password is blah blah, so I've gone ahead and put it in there. So that looks pretty promising. The real test is going over to your console. Ooh, I happen to have my users page up here, so I'm just going to click on reload and see if I've got my new user in here. Sure enough, I do. So here it is. You can see Rosefire is kind of nice because the UID is not just gibberish; it's actually the Rolls-Holman username, which I think is great. So I can tell that it worked already because I've got a Fisher DS user. If I go into my database, sure enough, I can see Fisher DS right there. Fisher DS has one password saved, and everything works. So cool. So feels like a lot of steps, but it's actually really not that hard. And the fun thing is once you've got it, everything else just works, right? Because we still are doing Firebase auth. So anonymous auth just signed you in without asking for anything. Email password, of course, did what it did. And custom auth, you just need this token, right? So it's actually kind of similar to anonymous auth, but it's just you have to give this token instead of nothing, right? All right, that's all we've got. Hopefully you can use Rosefire in your projects now. It's a really great tool if the app that you're making is really Rolls-Holman specific. All right, see you next time, and we'll do kind of the more generic, like useful for everybody, Google auth. See you then. Bye.